Welcome to today's episode of the Declutter Hub podcast, your channel for super easy, no nonsense advice on how to declutter and organise your home. Please welcome your hosts, professional organisers Ingrid Jansen and Lesley Spellman.
Hello and welcome listeners to episode 141 of the Declutter Hub podcast. I'm Lesley. Now, I'm so excited today because in today's episode, I'm talking to my Katie Hassall. She's one of my Clutter Fairies and has been working for me for over 5 years. Katie lives in the beautiful walled city of Chester and is about to move house for the second time in a year. Now, I feel like I need to put some context into this, Katie. So about 5 or 6 years ago, you came to me and you were like a dog with a bone in terms of, I want to be a declutterer. And I was like, but I haven't got any availability. I haven't got any vacancies, Katie. And so I'd love you to come. But you were like, well, I'm just going to stay in touch until it might even be longer. That it's probably 7 years ago.
This is our 7th year.
It's our 7th year. And you were like, but that's what
we started our 7th year this year. Yeah.
And I was like, as soon as I've got a vacancy, you're on. And then you started about 5 years ago and we have never looked back. And so now you are my right hand woman at the Clutter Fairy for sure. And you also work for the Declutter Hub. You do all of our social media. So any of our fabulous social media posts, Katie is at the helm of that, organising all that kind of stuff and loads of other things in between. And as well as that, you find time to be an executive assistant as well. So paperwork and life admin is your thing, I think it's fair to say.
Yes, definitely.
You love a bit of paperwork. I mean, we all do, don't we? I do, yes. Ingrid does, you do. So we have that one thing in common where we love a bit of life admin and paperwork. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about the topic of life admin. So what is it? What is life admin? Katie, you tell me what you think life admin actually is.
I think from my point of view, it's the kind of personal day-to-day administrative chores. And I use the word chores quite strongly because I think a lot of people feel like that about that kind of administration. It's the things that they don't really want to do, but they actually have to do. So paying bills, nobody ever wants to do that for sure. Answering emails, booking appointments, just general paperwork, day-to-day things that keep your life running smoothly. But aren't fun for most people. You're absolutely right. We love it. I definitely love it for sure. It's one of my favourite things to do. I do it for my clients, myself, obviously. And as an executive assistant, it's the bulk of what I do. Life admin, I pretty much do all of my boss's life admin for her to keep her life running smoothly, basically. But that's what it means from my point of view. I think it means different things to different people sometimes, but that's my take on what life admin is.
I think it's fair to say, though, that for most people, we are quite strange in that we find it quite fun, but most people don't find it fun at all. And so chore is exactly the right word for it, isn't it? You know, because it's just something that we just, like you say, we just have to do it. But, you know, do you really want to spend your time doing that? But I suppose today's podcast is really about, so I guess today's podcast is all about how we can incorporate it into our routine so that it doesn't become overwhelming. So some of this life admin we do on a weekly basis, some of it we have to do on a seasonal basis. We don't have to do everything every week. There are some things that we definitely have to do on a weekly basis. So what kind of examples can you think of, Katie, of something that we might do on a weekly basis?
I think that will vary by person, but again, I'd say, I know that I make sure all of my bills are paid every week. And then I make sure that I've checked my weekly appointments to ensure that we know what's happening that week. And for example, I would make check-in with all of my clients that I'm due to be with to make sure that they're still on for their session that week, and check in with, I know it's not the same at the minute with lockdown, but on a normal week, we would be checking in with our friends and family to make sure that everything that we've booked in with them is still happening and we've got all the necessary things in place as well. If you're going away for the weekend, for argument's sake, you would want to make sure that your tickets are booked, your hotels are booked, that you've got all of the information you need to know where you're going and how to get there. Other examples, I think, would be things like your emails. Obviously, we're wanting to check emails. I'd say probably more on a daily basis, but absolutely there are some things that you want to check in weekly to make sure that they've been properly processed and handled. And for those with little ones, I think obviously you've got lots of after school activities, and the homework to make sure that that's dealt with and that that's ready for handing into the teacher the following day, that kind of thing. But lots and lots of things. I mean, I could go, I think you've alluded to this, but we can go on and on, can't we, about how much stuff there is to do.
Yeah.
The list is endless.
It is. It's interesting, really, because Ingrid and I have just written a routines course, or several routines courses in the membership. And so we really delve deep in terms of what life admin actually is and how it differs to things like cleaning on a weekly basis, or tidying your home, or resetting, as we like to call it, on a weekly basis, or meal planning on a weekly basis. We definitely consider life admin to be something completely different, which is exactly what you mentioned, keeping things ticking over. And I think the important thing really to remember with that is that, there'll be a lot of people out there saying, but I don't need to pay my electricity bill on a weekly basis. But you kind of need to keep on top of whether that needs to be paid on a weekly basis. So you're not actually doing everything on a weekly basis, but you're just doing that little check, aren't you, to make sure that there's nothing that needs to be done. So all of these things don't need to be done every week, but you do need to have something in place so that you know what needs to be done, so that you write in your lists and so on.
Yeah, and it depends what the bill is, because it might not be the same bill every week, but there will be bills within that week. And it could be not even necessarily utilities, but you might have other things that you purchase that you need to just make sure everything's paid for. Back to children's activities, if they've got something on that the school needs the money for, or like I say, social things, there might be a bill outstanding for something you've got coming up for that. It's not necessarily, like I say, the same bill every week, but I think it's worth checking in every week to make sure that what's coming up has been dealt with. Because I think, and this is one of the key things I would say, is not leaving life admin to once a month. I don't think that's often enough. I think too much stuff will have built up by then that it will be overwhelming, and you most likely will have missed something. I'd say I do it probably more often than once a week, and that's because I'm juggling quite a lot of balls and there's lots of plates spinning in my life. So I find it beneficial to check in almost daily with some things, just to make sure I've ticked off the things that need doing. But for a normal person with a kind of a general lifestyle, I'd say once a week is a good point to check in and make sure you've dealt with the things that need to handle that period, basically.
Definitely. So you alluded to the fact that if you don't keep on top of it on a weekly basis or on a regular basis, it becomes overwhelming. So what are the benefits of keeping on top of life admin on a weekly basis?
Oh, lots and lots of benefits. Oh, massive. I think, like anything else when it comes to organisation, if you put that time in up front and you stay on top of things, massive stress reduction. It can be really unpleasant for people if their life admin isn't managed properly, because unpaid bills, missed appointments, missed emails with things you needed to handle can be a massive stress, and it's just really unpleasant. I think if you've got your life admin all handled, life runs so much more smoothly. Yes, we've said this before, they are chores, they're not fun for most people, but once they've been handled, it makes life so much easier. What difference you can have for your household overall as well. I think if everybody knows everything's handled and they know where they need to be, what they need to do, and that all of the bills are paid, everybody just is a little bit happier, I think, which makes for a nicer home environment in that sense. But yeah, it's such a nice thing to have your life under control. And you can obviously as well, if you put that time in up front, you can save money as well. That's one thing that's always really important to me, for my clients and myself, is making sure that I've spent that little bit of time up front doing the research, spending the time getting the best deals. So again, saving time, saving money, saving stress, so many benefits, endless really. So it's about committing, isn't it, to making sure you allocate that little bit of time for your life admin to get massive benefits at the other end.
So I think it's really interesting, Katie, because you talk about, we've talked about overwhelm, we've talked about stress, and it is stressful when you're not on top of these things. And it's one of those things, isn't it, life admin, that we definitely procrastinate over. We definitely put it off because the task seems so overwhelming to do, doesn't it? And so we're like, oh, I don't want to do that. I don't want to make that phone call. I don't want to pay that bill. I don't want to do that price comparison. I don't want to book that holiday. We put these things off and we procrastinate hugely, don't we, over this type of thing?
Yeah, of course. I think that a lot of that is to do with the fact that, things are so complicated now, and people worry that they're going to do things wrong when actually sometimes it's just better to get it done. It's about understanding as well what's really important to you as an individual as well. So if you've got a couple of things to choose from and a limited amount of time to handle it, pick the thing that's most important. Get used to prioritizing properly. So everybody's got different priorities. We all know we need to get bills paid. Of course, that's the boring stuff. Nobody wants an unpaid bill. So I think, you know, the key thing for me really is about prioritizing. That's about understanding what's important to you, what really matters to you. Obviously, we've got to have bills paid. Nobody wants unpaid bills, but understand of all of the things on that life admin list, what really matters to you. So as example, for me, spending time with my family and friends is most important for me. I need to make sure that I've allocated time in my week for the people that matter, because we all know that it happens. How quickly does your whole week get absorbed by things, and all of a sudden you've got no time left, you haven't seen anyone, you haven't even put a phone call in to speak to the important people. So make sure that you understand what matters to you and dedicate that time, put that time in your diary when you're planning your week out, and make sure that that's done and it's in there, and there's no way that that gets bumped then. Basically, I was a big fan of going out and attending social events. I love to do things, I love to be out and about and seeing people, so I make sure that I'm usually booked up about 8 weeks in advance. But yeah, just make time for the things that matter, is kind of the way I would summarize it. Think about what's important to you.
Yeah, and I think it's the same with any kind of decluttering, Katie, isn't it? Is that, you know, if you've got this overwhelming amount of things, whether it's clutter in your house or organisation that needs to be done, or cleaning or life admin or meal planning or shopping or any of those things, sometimes we put those ahead of actually enjoying ourselves. And so the more control and organisation that we have in our homes, the more time then we have available, and we don't feel guilty about going out and doing things that we want to do. And that's what life's all about. And that's what this decluttering and organising journey is all about. You know, we want to make sure that people can do what they want to do. It's so important. I mean, one of the things that we've not spoken about, which is like super, super important, is of course, life admin is all about making lists, and we can tick things off our lists. And how satisfying is that?
Very much so. And I hear you talk about this a lot, and I do this actually. I've got all kinds of lists for different things, especially with having a few different roles and my own stuff to do. But even I've fallen foul of actually doing something and then putting on a list just so I can highlight it and cross it out, because I'm a highlighter. Everybody's different, but I love to highlight to take things off my list. But yeah, it's lists. I find lists really useful, and I've put lists into place for a lot of my clients as well, because even people who think they don't like lists surprise themselves when they realize actually how useful they are. But I've got probably about 5 or 6 lists on the go at any one time. But again, I prioritize them. They're all for different things. So I'll have some for long-term plans for myself, some for my jobs for that week for me. I'll then have different lists for each of my roles. And depending on what I need to do or I'm supposed to be doing on that day, or even in that hour for me, the way that I manage my life, I will flick between my lists. And I like mentally, it helps me to sort of sort them or keep them separate, to make sure that I'm focusing on the thing that's important at that point. I really do have to micromanage my life, but that works for me, absolutely works. Lists are the way forward. And contrary to what people might think, because I'm a bit of a techie, is I actually really, really love paper lists. I've never gotten away from them. I will do things online as far as to-dos go, but I'm a big, big fan of writing it down and crossing it out, for sure.
Now, when I talked at the beginning of the podcast about it being my Katie, I know people like, that's a bit weird. Stop saying this. She's your Katie. That's because she's this incredible list maker that keeps the whole of the Clutter Fairy business moving forwards. Because I'm a list maker. I do have lists, and I have some, but I like to keep things a little bit more in my head. I'm more of a kind of in my head person. That's not to say that I don't make lists, because I do, but I don't have such meticulous lists as my colleagues, Katie and Ingrid. So I'm a bit more fluid with my list making. But it's interesting actually, Katie, because we've had a question for this week's Q&A actually about lists and how we deal with lists. You know, Ingrid loves a list. She writes everything down. As you know, you love a list as well. We use digital lists as well. We use Asana for our tasks and things like that. We have used something in the past called Wunderlist, which was, I think it's changed now, it's called Microsoft To Do.
On now, I think.
Yeah, which is more about putting lists together for chores that need to be done around the house, household tasks, that kind of thing. So if you love a digital list or you love an app, then those are the kind of things that you can certainly look into as well. But no, somebody was saying, I think on the Facebook group this week about that they love to highlight. So I like to score through and throw away. If I do a list, and I do have lists to be fair, but they're kind of a bit more sporadic, but I love to throw my list away so that it's gone forever. I don't need any kind of record of what I have done. I just need to get it off my list. And so, but it is interesting how different people like to keep lists, like to see what they've done. Some like to highlight, some like to cross through. But yeah, list making is the key. So, okay, Katie, you know, the other interesting that I think is useful to talk about, because this is something that people really dislike. And one of the key things with life admin is being able to outsource things to people if you don't want to do them yourself. Now, life admin for most people is something that we absolutely have to do. But we then at the Clutter Fairy do work with a lot of clients, don't we, doing their life admin for them. So do you want to explain a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, as you said earlier, people really don't enjoy doing their life admin. So because we are organised, we're professional organisers at the end of the day. Actually take on life admin for a lot of our clients, a lot of the things I've referred to earlier, in helping getting them online, in some cases getting them unsubscribed from things, making sure the bills are paid, researching insurance for them to make sure they're getting the best deal. But honestly, I mean, I'm a professional organizer, but I still outsource some of my life admin. I absolutely, you know, it's the way forward. I've got an accountant, I've used a financial advisor, I've used lots of different other resources from other people who are the experts in their field, because at the end of the day, if you've got the luxury of being able to you've got some spare cash and you can afford to get somebody in to help you, absolutely recommend it. None of us are experts at everything. And much as we'd like to be, I think in our profession, we like to think we spread, don't we, far and wide in terms of the tasks that we undertake. But yeah, even I, as a professional organizer, will actually outsource some of my life admin. But yeah, it's the way forward for sure. So if you're struggling, definitely seek out help. There's lots of different ways that it can be handled. I know there's such things like VAs, personal assistants. I'm an executive assistant. That's literally what I do for my boss. I do all of her life admin for her. That means she can get on again with her day-to-day job. She's really important. She's got a lot on. She does a lot of hours. So it's perfect for her to know there's somebody in the background turning all the wheels, ticking all the boxes, getting everything done, and then she just doesn't have to worry about it anymore at all. It's such a relief for her.
She's very lucky. She's very lucky to have you to do. I know exactly who Katie's talking about. She's very lucky to have you doing her life admin all the time. So, and Katie, to be fair, does some of my life admin as well. So perfect, even better.
I love it though. I can't help it.
I know. Right.
I'm an addict.
So let's talk about, we talked about delegating things, really important. And so when we get down to the nitty gritty of life admin, when do we do it? So Katie, let's talk about when's a good time to do this life admin?
Okay, interesting one. I suppose everybody's life's different. I think you have to book the time out in advance and make it a habit. You've got to put time in your diary and say, okay, on Sunday afternoon is usually quietest, or Monday morning I have a few hours to spare. Everybody's life is different, so that time slot will vary, but you just have to make sure you commit to putting that time in your diary at a time will suit, to sit down, make it quiet, or put music on if that's what works best for you to help you think, thought process, and just to your concentration. Everybody's different, but allocate that time in your diary at a time that suits. Commit to it, put it in there, get it done, because if you don't, it's going to be another one of those things that you get to Sunday evening, you promised yourself on Monday morning you'd pay those bills and answer those emails and all these other things that we have on our list, and suddenly it's Sunday evening and you're heading to bed and you haven't done any of it. So put the time in. You have to make the time for it. That's it. It's got to happen, because we know the end result of life admin not happening is not fun. It's much less stressful and much nicer to have just bit the bullet, got on with it, and wait for it to than wait for it to all overflow and become incredibly stressful.
Yeah, definitely. It's finding that, it's this procrastination that we were talking about before. And, quite often once we actually get stuck in and do a task, it's never as bad as we thought it was going to be. It's just one of those things that we dread and we put off and we put off and we put off because it's not the top of our list of favorite things to do. And so, hang on, let's start.
I think once you actually start handling it though, and you get a routine and you get some habits in place, it becomes easier. It's like anything like this, that first step, making that first step to starting a life admin habit and setting the processes up is the difficult bit. Once that's in place and oh, do you know what? Okay, it's Saturday, 3:00. I've got to sit down now and pay a couple of bills and check my emails. All of a sudden, it just becomes a thing that you do. It's like any habit that we have to install into our lives. Once you get into the rhythm of it, it becomes a lot easier. And like you say, Lesley, it's never as bad as you think it's going to be. And actually, I would say to people, don't be too tough on yourselves, especially with the amount of complications there are in life nowadays. That people are so desperate to spend hours and hours and hours, for example, researching the best insurance, which is a minefield, I might like to add. Even I sometimes think, gosh, there's so many variations of this. But actually, sometimes it's about doing the best that you can at that point to make sure it's done, and then maybe allocating a bit more time later down the line if you want to do a bit more research on it for next time, but not putting too much stress on yourself. And again, it's perfectionism, but that goes hand in hand with procrastination, doesn't it? We all want everything to be so absolutely perfect that what happens is that perfectionism just ends up as procrastination, which means nothing gets done, which is a much worse place than do your best, just get some things off your list and start to move forward.
Definitely. So in terms of our advice to people then generally, so we've talked about delegating that, and it doesn't necessarily need to be to a professional. This can be splitting chores and tasks amongst family members as well, if there's someone else in your house. And so what makes sense, if you've got a partner, does it make sense for them to do certain things, or is that best place for you to do so? But like everything else, really, these things need to be discussed. Roles and responsibilities need to be discussed. Timing needs to be discussed. I mean, obviously, Katie, you've already said you've got lots of different hats and you've got lots of different life admin things to do, whether that's for clients or, yourself. And there's a crossover, isn't there, sometimes between work stuff, yours that sort of blends into work, really, doesn't it? So if you're working for clients, that's your work, really. And so when you're doing your own life admin, do you do that at a separate time, or do you incorporate that in your work day, or do you do that on a weekend? How does that work for you?
I do, I dip in and out of it every day, I would say, because my work day, the nature of the way my work is, I'm not a Monday to Friday 9 to 5. That just doesn't work with the way my life is. So I tend to do a little bit every day, if I'm honest. I do have some things that I do at very specific times on specific days, because, for example, bills is a great one. I pay my credit card off every week, which some people might think is absolutely bonkers, but I like to know, it helps me to understand what we've spent and what we spent it on, because I check the transactions so I can see where we spent our money. It also helps me to understand what we've got left for the rest of the month. And I use the age-old trick, because I've got a background in finance, I've got a brilliant points card that I utilise purely to get the points and just as a means of having a bit of protection because of the credit card protection, and I just pay it off every week. So it's a multiple process, and it hits a lot of the tasks, a lot of the tasks get completed as a consequence. But the rest of it, I dip in and out of it every day. That works for me. That won't work for everybody, but I tend to answer a few emails, deal with the bills for that day, and check the calendar, for example, for the following day. I do that out of habit every day. Every night I'll go through my calendar for the following day. But for work, for example, for us, for the Clutter Fairy, I check my calendar 2-3 days in advance, at least once a week, sometimes twice a week, because my diary can change, because I tend to drop a line to all of my clients just to check in with them to make sure they're still okay for their session. I've got lots of micro habits in my life that work for me brilliantly, to be honest. But
so you're talking about, so you've talked about micro habits. So how does that differ then to a Macro
They're
habits?
things, so they're just things, that tiny little snippets of things that I dip in and out of on a day-to-day basis. The text to my clients will be one example, but I very often will check my my credit card and bank balance maybe a couple of times throughout the week, because they're tiny little jobs that take a matter of seconds. Again, only if you're properly set up. So I have an online banking app, everything's online for me. I've got the app on my phone that works perfectly, and everything takes a matter of seconds. If somebody doesn't have any concept of how to get an online app or doesn't know how to log into it, then it becomes that initial job becomes a bit bigger, doesn't it? And that's that hurdle people have got to get over. But then the way I think of micro tasks is they're these things that just take a few seconds that you might do daily or a few times a week, that just keep on top of things, so you don't get to the end of a week and go, oh, wait a minute, where's that come from, or what happened there, what's gone wrong here. You deal with it kind of there, and then it gives you a bit of a heads up as to what's happening.
I think you're so right there, Katie. I think these micro tasks, and it's interesting that you call it that, really, because I never really thought about it in that way. But yeah, just things that keep things ticking over. They don't necessarily take any additional time, because you might just do them while you're sitting having your lunch, or when you're waking up in the morning, or whatever, just checking your bank balance and seeing that there's nothing gone awry. That's the most important thing, this permanent check. And particularly with banking, it's so important as well to keep on top, to make sure nothing's going wrong with, things happen, don't they? Bank accounts get hacked, unfortunately, and things like that. And you need to make sure that there's nothing going wrong. And these daily or sort of every couple of days checks are really useful to do. So all this talk about routines and life admin is getting me thinking about the courses that we've just put together in our membership, because it is something that people really struggle with. Of course, we can declutter and organise our homes, but then we need to maintain them. Now, at the Declutter Hub, as you know, Katie, we use the Reset Your Home system. So we have our thought by thought, then our room by room, and then we have the day by day element of it. And the day by day is where we incorporate our daily routines, our weekly routines, our seasonal routines. So all of the kind of keeping on top of what you've done before, because a house that you declutter and organize doesn't manage itself. It has to be constantly looked at. Even the micro tasks that you were talking about, Katie, all of these things need to be managed, and that takes work. And so people talk quite a lot about a decluttering project and when will I be done? And it's like, you're never done. Sadly, you're never done, because while things come into your house, while people misplace things, while people put things in the wrong place, it constantly needs to be evaluated and changed. So we put together a series of courses in the Declutter Hub, which we're super proud of, which have gone live since they've been going live pretty much every week or every couple of weeks since January. And we're almost there through our whole series. So we've got daily routines where we talk about resetting and command centers and donation stations and daily cleaning, all of these things. And then weekly cleaning, we talk about cleaning, resetting. What's a weekly reset? How does that differ to a daily reset? We talk about meal planning and food shopping. We talk about laundry that you need to keep on top of. And of course, we talk about life admin on a weekly basis, which is exactly what we've been talking about. We have seasonal courses as well. The seasonal life admin is bigger, much bigger than we spoke about today, because involved in that, of course, you've got things like organizing things for seasonal things, for parties, for birthday parties, for Christmas, for Easter, for all of those celebrations that we do. We've got to maintain our house outside. We've got to do boiler repairs. All those kind of things have to be done on a seasonal basis. So there's a seasonal life admin course. We have an indoor maintenance and an outdoor maintenance. And so when Ingrid and I started writing these courses, we were like, yeah, we'll do a routines course. And then all of a sudden we realized how huge that was. So all those courses have gone live in our membership. Our members are absolutely loving them. So if you think, oh, I am kind of fairly decluttered and organized, but I really do struggle to keep on top of things, come and take a look at our membership and see what it's all about. See whether the day by day section of our Reset Your Home system is going to be something that's going to help you. So you can find out all about that at members.declutterhub.com. If you're not sure, of course, we offer our 15-minute free discovery call. So the lovely Ingrid probably will talk to you about what we offer at the Declutter Hub and whether it's going to be something that's going to be beneficial to your life. So, Katie, so we have all of our lovely courses in our membership. Of course we do. I want you to give our listeners a couple of top tips that are going to be helpful to them.
Okay. I would say my top tip would be do the boring stuff first. Don't wait. It's awful, and we know that we don't want to do it, and it's not exciting, but get it done. So make sure that you those absolutely essential tasks that need to happen, get done, get them out of the way, just bite the bullet and get on with it. And one thing that we didn't talk about earlier on, but I would say making sure you learn to say no more. So that's kind of the opposite, isn't it, about some of the stuff we've talked about earlier, but actually learning to say no when there's something that's going in your task list or in your diary that actually really doesn't need to happen and isn't important. Like, learn to remove things while yourself breathing the space to get the important stuff done.
Talking about kind of sorting out the must-dos from the like-to-dos as well. Sometimes we do the things that we like to do, don't we? There are certain things that we must do. And so again, the procrastination, it's just a natural thing, isn't it? That's what we do. We do the things that we want to do and we ignore the things that we don't want to do. So yes, so Katie, we are at the end of our life admin podcast. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. We're very excited. I mean, we've been working for us for so long. And then I was like, yeah, where's Katie not done a podcast? She's been around for like forever. Just before we go then, Katie, tell me about one client that you've worked with that you do life admin for and how it's impacted them getting on top of things.
Yeah, I've worked in Manchester. We actually worked together on this job, actually, Lesley. We actually helped her to move in originally. And then it went on to, I did the follow-up sessions in terms of general decluttering. So we did what I would call an unpack, getting her actually just moved in. She hadn't decluttered before she packed, which isn't unusual. So I then helped her to do the decluttering. And one of the things she asked me to help with was her paperwork. She has a couple of different properties and a couple of businesses. So she had quite a large volume of paperwork. And as you well know, I'm a paperwork geek. So I was thrilled to help with that. And it was interesting because we just got chatting whilst we were working and explained obviously how much I enjoy budgeting and managing, kind of helping people to manage their finances in that sense, because obviously we were getting her paperwork in order, and a lot of that was financial paperwork. So she said, oh, would you help me to organize my budget? And I said, yeah, of course I will, absolutely. And it just kind of rolled out then into, got the paperwork in order. Then we knew what was going out where. We created a budget for her so she could understand where her money was going and what things were potentially spending more money on than she wanted to. We helped her to get her insurance costs down. We helped cancel direct debits for things that she just didn't want anymore. And it's just brilliant. I mean, I still work with her occasionally now. She's in a much better place because we've got a reset, but I still see her maybe a couple of times a year just to keep on top of things, because I think you mentioned this earlier, Lesley, but life changes. Same thing with life admin as it is with decluttering your home. No, it's not that no more life admin tasks are ever going to appear, or new life admin tasks aren't going to come around just because you've got all of the current stuff handled. It is an ongoing process. And it does need to be essentially constantly managed, or not constantly managed, but it needs to be regularly reviewed to make sure that you've got all of the right things in your list and everything's in control, basically.
So I think that one of the things that we mentioned right at the beginning, Katie, was saving money and time. And that's so critical because you have to go through that full process of managing your paperwork and sorting out your bills. And then you move into the kind of saving money and price comparisons and budgeting and things like that, and really start to fine tune. And that's when life admin becomes hugely satisfying and so much less overwhelming. So listeners, I really hope that our podcast on life admin has made you kickstart you into action. I hope you're not like, oh, it sounds like such a lot to do. I'm sure you are. But so our tips are really, take the bull by the horns, make sure you schedule time in to do your life admin every week so that it doesn't become this overwhelming, overbearing job. It's so important to think about that. We have loads of resources available on life admin. We've got podcasts on procrastination. We've got meal planning. All of those different things are available to you in the Declutter Hub. So please do go and seek them out. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please do share it with other people. Maybe your friends and family need to get a grip of their life admin. You'll find on our show notes all the sharing buttons and you can share it with them. If you want more handy tips and advice from Ingrid and I, you can find us in loads of different places. We've got a fabulous supportive Facebook group called the Declutter Hub Community, which is a great starting point, and it's a lovely, lovely group. We've got Instagram and a Facebook page too, and you can find us at Declutter Hub. We would love to see you there. Of course, I mentioned our lovely membership with our routines course series, which is amazing, even though I do say so myself. And so you can find out more about that at members.declutterhub.com. If you don't want to miss our next podcast, please do subscribe to the Declutter Hub podcast and it will pop into your notifications each Friday. So thank you so much for listening and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Declutter Hub podcast. Check out declutterhub.com for more inspiration and don't forget to tune in next week.